Good day, class, and welcome back once again to JLD Academy Online Free School. It's your tutor, Wasiu Moshood. So we are back here again in our economics class. Today, we want to look at the law of demand and supply in economics. Like I said before, we are going to look at the concept of demand and supply in economics. Before we proceed, let's look at our performance objectives. First and foremost, at the end of today's class, so students will be able to explain the meaning of demand and supply, as well as drawing schedules and curves of a given commodity, be able to state the laws of demand and supply, determine the equilibrium price and equilibrium point for a commodity, state and explain the factors that affect demand and supply for a commodity. So let's go. We are starting by looking at what is demand. So demand refers to the quantity of a commodity or service that consumers are willing and able to purchase at various prices over a given period of time. So in this case, so if a demand is only effective if the consumer has the ability to buy, to purchase the item is willing to buy. So otherwise, such demand is not effective. Having defined our demand as the quantities of goods and services that consumers are willing and able to buy over a given period of time, so we can look at demand schedule, which is just the baseline for drawing a demand curve. So the demand schedule is just a table that shows the relationship between the price of a commodity and the quantity demanded of it. So this will give us an insight into how we can do a graphical representation of the relationship between price and quantity demanded of a particular commodity. So the demand curve is naturally downward sloping. It's a negative slope. So this indicates that there is an inverse relationship between the price of goods and quantity demanded of it. And from there we can actually look at the supply. So what is supply? Supply actually refers to the quantity of a commodity or service that producers are willing and able to offer for sale at various prices over a specific period of time. The supply schedule, just like the demand schedule, is also a tabular representation of the relationship between the price of a commodity and the quantity supplied by the supplier. So from this table, we can come up with the supply curve, so which is also a graphical representation of the quantity supply and the price. So the curve is upward sloping, which indicates that there is a direct relationship between the price and quantity supplied by the producer. Right now, we are here to look at the laws of demand and supply. And so far in this class, we have looked at what is demand and what is supply. So we have also succeeded in looking at how we can, do a graphical representation of their various relationships between the price and the quantity. So now we are looking at the law of demand, which says that as the price of a commodity decreases, the quantity demanded of it will increase. And the other way around, as the price of a commodity increases, the quantity demanded of it will decrease. This indicates an inverse relationship between the price of a commodity and the quantity demanded of it. Actually, this inverse relationship may be due to one, the income effect. The income effect is just coming from the fact that if your income remains constant, the price of a particular commodity decreases, so you will have more purchasing power. Your purchasing power will increase. For instance, if you used to buy a loaf of bread for 500 naira, maybe by one thing or the other, the price of bread now dropped to 250 naira. So you have the power to buy two loaves of bread rather than one. So this is an income effect. We can as well think of substitution effect. So in other words, you are ready to substitute one commodity for another because of a price drop in the other, and because those items are substitutes. So we can think of yam and potato, for instance. So if you are used to consuming yam, and the price of yam goes up while the price of potato remain constant, so you tend to get attracted to buy potato because it's a substitute, and this is known as the substitution effect. Another factor that influences the relationship between the price and quantity demanded of it is known as the diminishing marginal utility. So you are ready to consume additional unit of a given commodity provided the price goes down. So the essence of diminishing marginal utility is that as you consume more and more of a particular commodity, you are already dissatisfied with it. So you tend to give it up in terms of wanting to buy more at higher prices. The income effect, the substitution effect, and the diminishing marginal utility are the reasons why the demand curve is downward sloped, and this justifies that as price of a particular commodity increases, the quantity demanded of it will come down. And with this graph, we can illustrate the inverse relationship between the price and quantity demanded of a commodity. So you can see that at higher price of 80 naira, the consumer can only buy 10 kilograms of a commodity. So but when the price dropped to 40 naira, he bought 20 kilograms of the same commodity. So and we can from here note that the movement along the demand curve can only be influenced by prices, change in prices, given that all other factors like income, like consumer preferences, like government policies, remain constant. Let us now look at the law of supply. So the law of supply states that as the price of a commodity increases, the quantity supply increases, and vice versa. So this is just like a direct relationship. So the producer are ready to bring more to market at higher prices, while the producer are reluctant to bring more to the market at decreased prices. The direct relationship between the price of a commodity and the quantity supply of it are due to the following. One, profit motive, because the interest of the producer is to make as much profit as possible, so they will tend to bring more to the market at higher prices. Production cost is also a notable factor, because as at higher prices, they will tend to cover the rising marginal cost of additional units, and they will want to produce more so that they can supply more to the market and widen the gap between their cost and profit. So we could also look at the opportunity for market entry. So when the prices of a particular item increases in the market, it will attract more producers, and this will also spur supply to the market. From the graph, you can see how the law of supply is actually illustrated with how the producer will react to price changes in the market. So at higher prices of 80 naira, the producer will want to supply more, which is about 20 kilograms of a given item. If the price drops to 40 naira, they will react by supplying only 10 kilograms. So the movement along that supply curve can only be made possible because of a change in the price of an item itself, and not any other factor. And from here, let us look at equilibrium price and the equilibrium point. So what is the equilibrium price? So equilibrium price is simply the market clearing price. It is the price at which quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. In this case, there's no shortage, which is excess demand, or surplus, which is excess supply. However, the point of intersection of the demand and supply curve is known as the equilibrium point. This is the point that shows the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity of a given commodity. And now, what do you think will happen when the price shifts away from the point of intersection of the demand and supply curve? So if it is above the equilibrium point, there is going to be a surplus supply against the demand. So this will create a lot of unsold goods, and it will force the sellers to lower their prices. But in a situation when the equilibrium price drops below the equilibrium point, so there's going to be a shortage of supplies. So in this case, demand will be greater than supply. So not much good will be available for the buyers, while the buyers will have to compete for the available commodities, which will force the price to rise again. In economics, the following factors do affect demand. 1. Price of the commodity, which is an explanation of the law of demand, which says that the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded of a commodity, and vice versa. And this is also an explanation for movement along the demand curve. Another common factor that do affect demand is the income. So higher income will increase demand for normal goods and decrease demand for inferior goods. Prices of related goods, which is also another factors that affect demand, can be viewed from two different perspectives, one from the substitute angle and the other from the complement angle. So if two commodities are substitutes, for instance, let's say rice and maize, so if the price of rice increases, so it will increase the demand for the substitute, which is the maize. For complement goods, let's say phone and phone pouch, for instance, so if the prices of phone rises, so it will make demand for the pouch to decrease. Consumer preferences or taste is also another factor that do affect demand. Increased preference will tend to shift demand curve rightward. Population, so a larger population, for instance, will increase demand for a commodity. Expectations, seasonal factors, and government policies are also notable factors that do affect demand. Students will, however, note that all these factors except price are the reason why we have a shift of the demand curve either to the right or to the left. Meanwhile, prices could only cause a movement along the demand curve, and it cannot cause a shift of the demand curve. We can now look at the factors affecting supply. First and foremost, we can look at the price of the commodity, which is an indication of the law of supply that says that the producer want to bring more to market at higher prices. Another factor is cost of production. The higher the cost of production, the lower the producer is willing to bring to the market. So cost of production at higher rates will tend to reduce producer supply to the market. Technology is also a factor. An improved technology will increase supply. Prices of related goods is also another factor. It could be looked at from two perspectives, either from a substitute goods perspective or joint products. For substitute in production, so for instance, higher wheat prices will reduce maize supply. So because if the prices of wheat increases in the market, producer want to produce more of wheat than maize when both are substitute in production. And for joint products, let's take for instance maize supply and corn oil. So and that we can actually extract corn oil from maize. So if prices of corn oil increases in the market, so producer want to produce more maize and supply as much maize so that you can as well get as much corn oil from the maize being produced. Number of producers in the market is also another factor. The higher the number of producers, the higher the supply of a particular commodity. Government policies, either from a subsidy or taxes perspective, could also influence the supply. So subsidy tend to increase supply in the market, while taxes will likely reduce the amount of quantity of a particular commodity being supplied. Natural condition is also another factor. It could be rain, sufficient rain for farmers to produce, or drought that could even impact agricultural supply negatively. So this could cause increase in agricultural supply or a decrease. Exploitation is also affect supply of goods and services from the producer end. Finally, on this note, students will know that every other factors except price could cause a shift of the supply curve to the right or left, while the only effect that price could cause is just a movement along the supply curve, which we have earlier discussed. So thank you for listening up, and we see you in the next class. Bye.